The U.S. Defiance hung in space like a phantom, its hull a masterpiece of adaptive camouflage that seemed to drink in starlight. To the untrained eye, it might have appeared as nothing more than another piece of cosmic debris, a forgotten remnant of some long-dead civilization. But Captain Elena Rodriguez knew better. Every molecule of the ship was a weapon, every system a potential lifeline. Her cybernetic eye flickered, quantum-encrypted data streams dancing across its iris like living fractals. The eye wasn't just an enhancement, it was a testament to humanity's desperate evolution. Decades of brutal interstellar conflicts had transformed humans from explorers to survivors, from peaceful researchers to the most adaptable predators the galaxy had ever witnessed. "Arai," Rodriguez whispered, her voice barely a breath against the ship's climate-controlled atmosphere. "Run quantum probability matrices on the incoming signatures." The ship's eye responded, its voice a perfect blend of clinical precision and something almost alive. "Analyzing, Captain. Krelltheri invasion fleet comprises 17 primary vessels, 43 support craft. Biomechanical composition suggests third-generation adaptive warfare technology." Rodriguez's prosthetic hand, a marvel of nano-engineered responsive materials, traced the holographic displays. Each movement sent ripples of data across the ship's internal systems. The Defiance was more than a vessel. It was a living organism, with Rodriguez as its central nervous system and ARIA as its brain. The ship's history was etched into every panel. Scars from previous encounters were visible, not hidden, but displayed like battle honors. Experimental metamaterial patches covered sections of the hull, each one a story of survival, of humanity's relentless drive to adapt and overcome. "Third generation," Rodriguez muttered, a sardonic smile playing across her lips. "They think that makes them special." Aria's response was immediate. Historical analysis suggests Krelltheri technological superiority in 73.6% of previous first contact scenarios. However, human adaptation rates demonstrate an unprecedented ability to overcome technological disparities. The captain's cybernetic eye zoomed in on the incoming fleet, biomechanical ships that looked more like living organisms than machines, organic hulls that could regenerate, weapons that could phase through conventional matter, targeting systems that predicted enemy movements with terrifying accuracy. But the Defiance was anything but conventional. Rodriguez remembered her training, not the sanitized academy lessons, but the brutal reality of humanity's stellar expansion. She had watched colonies burn, seen entire research teams reduced to genetic archives by species that viewed humans as nothing more than potential resources. Each loss had been a lesson, each defeat, a chance to evolve. The communication array hummed to life. Quantum-encrypted communication began to dance across the ship's exterior, transforming its very skin into an adaptive camouflage that made the Defiance simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. A massive holographic projection materialized in the command center. Admiral Orcs of the Krelltheri hegemony, a being of pure biological perfection. Tentacular appendages moved with calculated grace, multiple eyes analyzing the projected space around the Defiance. The transmission crackled with an arrogance born of 1,000 conquered civilizations. "Unidentified vessel." The transmission blared. Translation algorithms converting the complex biological communication into standard human speech. "You are in violation of Krelltheri territorial space. Surrender is the only logical outcome." Rodriguez's laugh was sharp enough to cut through vacuum. Aria's voice came again, this time with a hint of what could only be described as anticipation. "Threat assessment complete. Probability of successful engagement, 67.3% in our favor. Shall I begin tactical preparations?" The captain's cybernetic eye pulsed, neural interfaces burning with an intensity that transformed her into something more than human, something evolved, something hungry. "Prepare for combat," Rodriguez commanded, and ARIA. "Make sure they remember this day." Outside, the vast emptiness of the Omega Quadrant waited. The Kreltheri invasion fleet approached, confident in their superiority. They had no idea what was coming. Humanity was about to teach them the meaning of true fear. The computational core of the U.S. Defiance was not a mere machine. It was a weapon of mathematical destruction. As the Kreltheri fleet approached, Araya began its most intricate performance, a ballet of quantum algorithms that would redefine the very concept of warfare. Lieutenant Marcos Chen, the ship's lead quantum systems engineer, watched in awe as holographic displays transformed around him. His station was a cathedral of human innovation, experimental interfaces that blurred the line between organic thought and computational precision. Implants along his temple pulsed with neural feedback, connecting him directly to the ship's most classified systems. Incoming quantum phase targeting, Chen muttered, his fingers dancing across holographic controls that seemed to breathe and pulse with living energy. Araya, activate adaptive resonance protocol. The ship's eye was already 10 steps ahead. Quantum probability matrices expanded like fractal blooms, each potential trajectory of the incoming Kreltheri weapons mapped and countermapped in microseconds. The Defiance wasn't just defending, it was learning, adapting, predicting. On the primary display, the Kreltheri fleet appeared as a writhing mass of biomechanical nightmares. Each vessel was a living organism, grown rather than constructed. Organic hulls that could regenerate damage in seconds, weapons that could phase through conventional matter, targeting systems that predicted enemy movements with terrifying accuracy. They had conquered 1,000 civilizations, reduced entire species to genetic archives, assimilated or destroyed everything in their path. But they had never met humans. Initiating quantum desynchronization, Araya announced, its voice a perfect blend of clinical precision and something almost sentient. The ship's reactor, a marvel of modified dark energy technology, pulsed with increasing intensity. Experimental metamaterials along the hull began to shift, creating a camouflage pattern that was less about hiding and more about active misdirection. Marcos understood what was happening. The Defiance wasn't just preparing to defend, it was preparing to deconstruct the very concept of attack. Rodriguez moved with predatory grace, her cybernetic interface allowing her to feel the ship as an extension of her own body. Each neural connection was a weapon, each thought a potential tactical advantage. Araya, she called out, show me the probability cascades. Holographic displays erupted around her, showing millions of potential engagement scenarios. Most military strategists would be overwhelmed. Rodriguez read them like a musician reading a complex musical score. The Kreltheri communication burst came, a standard demand of immediate surrender, backed by centuries of successful subjugation. It was a transmission that had broken the will of countless civilizations. Mathematical precision met biological intimidation. Araya intercepted the transmission, and something extraordinary happened. Instead of a simple response, the AI began to broadcast a complex mathematical proof, a deconstruction of the Kreltheri's own tactical algorithms. It wasn't just a rejection of surrender. It was an intellectual dismantling of their entire strategic framework. Probability manipulation initiated, Araya reported, targeting systems experiencing quantum uncertainty. The ship's experimental dark energy reactor began to pulse in a rhythm that defied conventional physics. Marcos watched in fascination as the reactor's output created micro-dimensional fluctuations, each pulse a potential weapon more devastating than any conventional armament. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Nakamura, the ship's xenobiological warfare specialist, leaned forward. Her own neural implants were parsing the Kreltheri communication in real time, looking for psychological vulnerabilities. Their hive mind communication has a 0.03-second synchronization delay, she reported. We can exploit that. Rodriguez's cybernetic eye flickered, processing information at speeds that would burn out conventional systems. Exploit it, she commanded. The Defiance was transforming. No longer just a ship, it became a living weapon, a mathematical predator that understood warfare as an art form of probability and adaptation. The Krulthari fleet continued its approach, confident in technological superiority that had crushed 1,000 civilizations. They had no idea what was coming. Humanity was about to rewrite the rules of engagement. The first volley came like a storm of quantum phase missiles, weapons that could slice through battleships as if they were gossamer veils. Each projectile represented the accumulated technological might of the Krulthari hegemony, carrying enough destructive potential to reduce entire planetary systems to cosmic dust. But the U.S. Defiance didn't just dodge. It anticipated. Incoming quantum phase penetrators, Lieutenant Chen called out, his neural interfaces crackling with anticipation. Vectors indicate multiple simultaneous attack points. Rodriguez's cybernetic eye saw beyond conventional perception. The incoming missiles were more than weapons. They were a complex mathematical problem waiting to be solved. Microthrusters fired in sequences that defied traditional physics, the ship twisting through space with a grace that made the laws of motion seem like mere suggestions. Aria's voice resonated through the ship's systems. Quantum trajectory analysis complete. Initiating adaptive evasion protocol. What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. The Defiance moved like liquid light, its adaptive metamaterial hull shifting and responding to each incoming missile with impossible precision. Where a conventional ship would have relied on simple directional thrusters, the Defiance seemed to dance, sliding between quantum probabilities, existing simultaneously in multiple potential spaces. One missile passed through the exact point where the ship should have been, only to find nothing but vacuum. Another tracked the vessel's heat signature, only to have the ship's thermal camouflage completely nullify its targeting systems. The third missile attempted to phase through the ship's hull, only to find its quantum coherence suddenly and catastrophically disrupted. Quantum resonance field at maximum, Nakamura reported, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. We're not just avoiding them. We're systematically dismantling their targeting capabilities. Rodriguez allowed herself the briefest of smiles. This was more than combat. This was an art form. The Krulthari fleet began to realize something was fundamentally wrong. Their most advanced weapons, which had reduced countless civilizations to cosmic debris, were being rendered completely ineffective by a single vessel that seemed to exist outside the normal rules of engagement. Araya began its next phase of attack. Quantum encrypted communication bursts began to flood the Krulthari communication networks. But these weren't simple jamming signals. Each burst was a complex mathematical algorithm designed to create cascading uncertainty in their targeting systems. Initiating cognitive dissonance protocol, the AI announced. The ship's experimental dark energy reactor pulsed, creating micro-dimensional fluctuations that began to interfere with the Krulthari ship's navigational systems. It was more than electronic warfare. It was a systematic psychological assault that attacked the very foundation of their technological superiority. Lieutenant Commander Nakamura watched in fascination. Their hive mind communication is experiencing quantum uncertainty, she reported. We're not just breaking their targeting. We're breaking their collective cognitive processes. Marcos Chen's station erupted with holographic displays showing the cascading effect. The Krulthari ships were beginning to fire on each other, confused by the quantum misinformation being fed into their systems. Probability matrices showing increased friendly fire incidents, Araya reported. Cognitive dissonance at 62.7% effectiveness. Rodriguez's voice was calm, almost clinical. Continue the performance. It was a performance. That's exactly what it was. Each movement, each quantum pulse, each redirected missile was a note in a complex symphony of destruction. The Defiance wasn't just fighting. It was composing a mathematical opus of warfare that would be studied for generations. The Krulthari fleet began to fragment. Ships that had moved with perfect synchronization mere moments ago now drifted in confused patterns, their collective intelligence suddenly fractured. They're learning what it means to be truly unpredictable, Rodriguez muttered. And this was just the beginning. Outside, the vast emptiness of space bore witness to humanity's most extraordinary performance, a dance of impossible odds, where the rules of warfare were being rewritten with each passing moment. The true weapon wasn't in the Defiance's quantum missiles or adaptive hull. It was something far more insidious, a systematic dismantling of the Krell-Thery's collective psyche. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Nakamura's Psychological Warfare Station came alive with a complex symphony of communication vectors. Her neural implants, a masterpiece of human bioengineering, processed alien communication patterns faster than any conventional computer could dream. "Araya," she called out, her voice calm despite the intensity of the moment. "Begin cultural infiltration protocol." The ship's AI responded with mathematical precision, initiating multi-vector psychological disruption. What happened next was nothing short of psychological warfare, unprecedented in galactic history. The Krell-Thery communication networks, a complex web of biomechanical synapses that connected their entire fleet, suddenly found themselves bombarded with something completely unexpected. It wasn't just interference. It was a carefully crafted assault on their collective consciousness. Earth's entire cultural archive began to flood their systems. Classical music erupted through their communication channels. Mozart's Symphony No. 40 mixed with traditional Chinese folk music, overlaid with Argentine tango rhythms. Mathematical proofs from ancient human mathematicians danced between quantum communication bursts. Fragments of human literature appeared: poetry by Neruda, philosophical musings by Borges, scientific theories by Einstein. Each transmission a carefully selected weapon designed to create maximum cognitive dissonance. The Krell-Thery had conquered thousands of civilizations by understanding their fundamental weaknesses. They'd broke societies by identifying and exploiting their core psychological vulnerabilities. But humans? Humans were beautifully, terrifyingly unpredictable. Analyzing reaction patterns, Araya reported, collective Krell-Thery consciousness experiencing unprecedented cognitive fragmentation. Rodriguez watched the holographic displays, her cybernetic eye tracking millions of data points simultaneously. Each transmission was a precision-guided psychological missile, designed to do something far more devastating than physical destruction. They were making the Krell-Thery question everything. Marcos Chen's station began projecting complex cultural cross-references. Human mathematical theorems were intercut with alien communication protocols. Each transmission was a puzzle, a challenge to the Krell-Thery's understanding of logical communication. Their hive mind is experiencing recursive uncertainty. Chen reported, a hint of excitement in his voice. We're introducing conceptual frameworks they've never encountered. The broadcasts weren't random. They were a carefully orchestrated psychological symphony. A burst of quantum encrypted data would suddenly transform into a complex musical composition. Tactical communication channels would be interrupted by philosophical debates about consciousness. Mathematical proofs would dissolve into fragments of human poetry, each transmission designed to create maximum cognitive dissonance. Admiral Zarux, watching from the primary Krell-Thery command vessel, found himself experiencing something unprecedented: confusion. The human vessel wasn't just fighting, it was deconstructing the very foundations of Krell-Thery warfare. Psychological disruption at 78.3%, Araya reported. Collective communication coherence dropping exponentially. Rodriguez understood something fundamental about warfare that the Krell-Thery had never comprehended. Combat wasn't just about destroying bodies or ships. It was about destroying belief systems, about challenging fundamental understanding. The Defiance's communication arrays continued their assault. Human languages, hundreds of them, began to interweave with Krell-Thery communication protocols. Sanskrit poetry mixed with quantum mathematical equations. Aboriginal Dreamtime stories interfaced with complex computational algorithms. They're learning what it means to be human, Rodriguez muttered. Each transmission was a weapon more powerful than any physical missile. The Krell-Thery fleet, once a model of perfect synchronization, began to fragment. Ships that had moved with perfect collective intelligence now drifted in confused patterns, their unified consciousness suddenly fractured. Aroya's voice held something almost like satisfaction. Psychological warfare protocol approaching maximum effectiveness. Outside, the vast emptiness of space bore witness to humanity's most extraordinary weapon. Not technology, not physical might, but the ability to make an entire civilization question its own fundamental understanding of reality. The Krulthuri were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was never its weapons. It was its beautiful, terrifying unpredictability. Space was not just a battlefield. It was a living canvas, and the U.S. Defiance was about to paint a masterpiece of destruction. Lieutenant Commander Elena Vasquez, the ship's primary environmental systems specialist, lived for moments like these. Her station was a symphony of holographic displays, showing every minute detail of the surrounding cosmic environment. Where most species saw empty space, Vasquez saw a complex ecosystem of potential weapons. "RIA," she called out, her fingers dancing across quantum reactive interfaces. "Activate Comprehensive Environmental Integration Protocol." The nearby asteroid field was no longer just a collection of space rocks. It became a tactical array of unprecedented complexity. Microgravitational pulses began to manipulate the asteroid's trajectories. Each massive stone became a potential weapon, their courses carefully calculated to create maximum disruption to the Krulthuri fleet. But this was more than simple ballistic manipulation. The Defiance was rewriting the very rules of space combat. Solar wind, typically viewed as an ambient environmental factor, transformed into a precision instrument. RIA began to modulate the electromagnetic interactions, creating localized disturbances that would blind Krulthuri sensors and disrupt their biomechanical communication networks. Initiating quantum phase environmental resonance, RIA reported. Captain Rodriguez watched the holographic displays with a predatory intensity. Her cybernetic eye parsed millions of environmental data points per second, seeing the space around them as a living, breathing tactical environment. A nearby neutron star became their next weapon. Most species would avoid such a cosmic powerhouse. The Defiance saw it as an opportunity. Vasquez began to calculate precise gravitational interactions, using the neutron star's immense magnetic field as a kind of cosmic tuning fork. Magnetic field resonance at 78.6% optimization, she reported, a rare smile crossing her face. "We're about to give them a light show they'll never forget." The Krulthuri had conquered thousands of civilizations by treating space as a simple medium of travel and combat. Humans understood something fundamentally different. Space was alive, dynamic, a complex system that could be manipulated like an instrument. Marcos Chen's quantum systems began to interface directly with the cosmic environment. Experimental metamaterials along the Defiance's hull started to absorb and redirect energy from the surrounding space. Solar radiation, electromagnetic fluctuations, even minute gravitational waves, all became part of their defensive and offensive arsenal. Environmental integration at maximum efficiency, RIA announced. Krulthuri sensor networks experiencing cascading failure. A massive asteroid, previously on a stable trajectory, suddenly altered its path with impossible precision. It wasn't just moving, it was being choreographed. The rock became a precision weapon, its course calculated to create maximum psychological and physical disruption. Lieutenant Nakamura's Xenopsychological Warfare Station began to analyze the environmental manipulations. "They're experiencing something beyond traditional combat," she reported. "We're demonstrating that the environment itself can be a weapon." The neutron star's magnetic field began to pulse in a carefully calculated rhythm. Electromagnetic waves created complex interference patterns that disrupted the Krulthuri ship's navigation and communication systems. It was more than interference. It was a cosmic symphony of destruction. Rodriguez understood the fundamental truth of warfare that the Krulthuri had never comprehended. Combat wasn't about overwhelming force. It was about understanding and manipulating complex systems. "Redirect solar wind," she commanded. "Create a quantum phase interference corridor." What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. The space around the Defiance transformed. Solar wind became a precision instrument, creating localized areas of extreme electromagnetic disruption. Asteroid trajectories shifted with impossible precision. The very fabric of space seemed to become a weapon. Aria's voice held a hint of what might have been satisfaction. Environmental weaponization protocol at maximum effectiveness. The Krelthari fleet found themselves trapped in a living nightmare. Ships that had moved with perfect synchronization now struggled against manipulated gravitational fields. Sensor networks collapsed. Communication channels became nothing more than static. They were learning that humans saw the universe not as a battlefield, but as a complex, living system to be understood and manipulated. Outside, the vast emptiness of space bore witness to humanity's most extraordinary performance, a dance of cosmic proportions where the very environment became the most devastating weapon. Desperation has a quantum signature all its own. The Krelthari command ship began charging its ultimate weapon, the quantum singularity device, a technological horror that could create localized black holes, capable of consuming entire star systems in the blink of an eye. It was the weapon that had broken 1,000 civilizations, the ultimate expression of the Krelthari's technological supremacy. Quantum singularity charge detected, Aria announced, its voice a perfect blend of clinical precision and something almost like anticipation. Threat assessment. Existential. Captain Rodriguez's cybernetic eye flickered, processing millions of potential scenarios per microsecond. Her neural interfaces burned with an intensity that transformed her into something more than human, a living tactical algorithm. "Full quantum resonance," she commanded. "Prepare for quantum phase interdiction." Lieutenant Marcos Chin's station erupted with holographic displays, showing the most complex mathematical problem ever conceived. The quantum singularity device wasn't just a weapon. It was a fundamental challenge to the laws of physics, a cosmic knife designed to cut through the very fabric of space-time. But humans had never been good at following rules. Initiating quantum phase deconstruction protocol, Aria reported. The ship's experimental dark energy reactor pulsed with increasing intensity, creating micro-dimensional fluctuations that began to interact with the singularity's quantum signature. What happened next was nothing short of a mathematical miracle. The quantum singularity device began to experience quantum uncertainty at its most fundamental level. Its very existence became a probabilistic nightmare. Each moment, it existed in multiple states simultaneously. Charge, uncharged, deployed, contained. Quantum coherence disruption at 62.4%. Chen reported, his fingers dancing across interfaces that seemed to breathe with living energy. "We're not just stopping the weapon. We're fundamentally challenging its ability to exist." Lieutenant Commander Sarah Nakamura's Xenotechnology Station began to overlay complex mathematical proofs onto the singularity's quantum signature. It was more than interference. It was a systematic deconstruction of the weapon's fundamental existence. The Krelthari command ship watched in growing horror. Rodriguez understood something fundamental about warfare that the Krelthari had never comprehended. True victory wasn't about destruction. It was about understanding, and then fundamentally altering the very systems of conflict. "Aria," she called out. "Begin quantum phase resonance cascade." The Defiance's hull began to vibrate at frequencies that defied conventional physics. Experimental metamaterials shifted and adapted, creating a quantum interference field that began to interact with the singularity device at its most fundamental level. It wasn't just a weapon anymore. It was a mathematical problem waiting to be solved. Nakamura's station began to broadcast a series of quantum-encrypted signals directly into the weapon's computational core. Mathematical theorems that challenged its very existence. Probability matrices that created recursive uncertainty. Each transmission was a precision-guided intellectual missile. Quantum singularity device experiencing fundamental existential crisis. Araya reported, a hint of what might have been satisfaction in its voice. The weapon began to destabilize. Where most species would have attempted to destroy the device through brute force, the Defiance was systematically deconstructing its very ability to function. Quantum signatures began to fragment. Computational matrices collapsed. The Singularity device was experiencing something unprecedented, a fundamental challenge to its ability to exist. Chen's voice cut through the tension. Quantum phase interdiction at maximum effectiveness. The device is becoming a probabilistic anomaly. Rodriguez watched the holographic displays with predatory intensity. This was more than combat. This was a fundamental challenge to the Krell understanding of technological supremacy. The quantum singularity device, the weapon that had broken 1,000 civilizations, began to collapse in on itself. Not through physical destruction, but through a systematic deconstruction of its fundamental quantum signature. Weapon neutralized, Araya announced. Outside, the vast emptiness of space bore witness to humanity's most extraordinary performance, a dance of quantum possibilities, where the most devastating weapon in the galaxy was defeated not by force, but by understanding. The Krell were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was never its weapons. It was its ability to understand, and then fundamentally reshape, the very nature of conflict itself. Silence descended across the decimated battlefield. The remaining Krell ships drifted like wounded predators, their once perfect collective consciousness fractured beyond recognition. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood at the command center of the U.S. Defiance, her cybernetic eye scanning the cosmic debris with a predatory intensity that spoke of something far deeper than military victory. Araya's voice cut through the tension. Preparing communication burst. Quantum encrypted channels at maximum capacity. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Nakamura's Xena communication station hummed with anticipation. This wasn't just a transmission. It was a declaration, a message that would echo through the galactic consciousness. Compile the message, Rodriguez commanded. Make sure they understand everything. What happened next was more than a simple communication. It was a comprehensive cultural download, a transmission that would redefine the Krell understanding of humanity. The message began with mathematics, not as a weapon, but as a language of universal understanding. Complex quantum equations that demonstrated humanity's scientific prowess intertwined with fragments of human cultural history. Archaeological records showed the long journey of human civilization, from primitive tool users to interstellar explorers. Each frame was a testament to human resilience. Images of Earth scrolled through the transmission. Not the sanitized propaganda of a perfect world, but the raw, unfiltered reality of human existence. Cityscapes beside wilderness. Moments of brutal conflict alongside unprecedented cooperation. The chaotic, beautiful complexity of human civilization. Marcos Chen's quantum communication systems began to overlay the transmission with something unprecedented. Musical compositions that demonstrated mathematical complexity. Philosophical treatises that challenged fundamental assumptions about consciousness. Art that defied simple categorization. Transmission at 87.6% quantum coherence, Araya reported. Maximum information density achieved. The message was clear. Humanity was not just another civilization to be conquered. We were something fundamentally different. Fragments of human history played out in quantum encrypted bursts. The struggles against climate change. The first steps on Mars. The global cooperation that had transformed human civilization from a collection of competing nations to a unified species reaching for the stars. Lieutenant Vasquez's environmental systems began to broadcast the most complex message of all: humanity's relationship with the universe itself. Scientific discoveries that showed how humans had learned to understand and respect the delicate balance of cosmic systems. We are not conquerors, the transmission declared, not through words but through a complex tapestry of information. We are explorers. We are survivors. We are something you have never encountered before. Rodriguez understood the fundamental truth of the moment. This wasn't about victory. It was about communication. about showing the Krell theory and every other species in the galaxy what humanity truly represented. The transmission continued, a quantum-encrypted symphony of human existence. Mathematical proofs danced with musical compositions, philosophical debates intertwined with scientific discoveries. Cultural records showed the beautiful, chaotic journey of a species that refused to be defined by limitations. "Prepare final communication burst," Araya announced. The message that followed was simple, direct, a promise and a warning wrapped into a single quantum-encrypted transmission. "We do not seek conquest. We do not want war. But we will defend ourselves. And to those who would threaten our existence, we are always watching." Lieutenant Nakamura's station showed the transmission's impact. The remaining Krell theory ships were experiencing something unprecedented, a complete recalibration of their understanding of an intelligent species. This was more than a military engagement. This was first contact rewritten. The Defiance hung in space, a silent sentinel. The nearby stars seemed to bear witness to a moment that would be remembered long after this specific conflict had faded into galactic memory. Rodriguez watched the holographic displays, her cybernetic eye processing the final transmission stages. Something almost like a smile crossed her face. They had done more than win a battle. They had sent a message to the entire galaxy. Humanity was here, and we would not be underestimated. The quantum communication burst traveled faster than light, carrying with it the most extraordinary first contact message in galactic history. Deep within the United Terran Command Center on Mars, Admiral Kira Yoshida watched the transmission logs with a mixture of pride and trepidation. The Defiance was more than a ship. It was humanity's first true ambassador to a universe that had never truly understood them. Analyzing galactic response patterns, the central AI reported holographic displays lighting up with incoming data from hundreds of communication relays across explored space. The initial reactions were as diverse as the civilizations receiving the transmission. The Zorn Confederacy, a collection of silicon-based life forms that had remained neutral in galactic conflicts for millennia, began to show unprecedented levels of curiosity. Their quantum communication arrays lit up with analysis protocols, dissecting every microsecond of the Defiance's transmission. Subjugated civilizations under Krell control began to experience something revolutionary: hope. On 1,000 worlds, species that had been reduced to genetic archives and labor castes found themselves studying the transmission. The mathematical proofs, the cultural records, the raw demonstration of resistance. It was more than a message. It was a spark of possibility. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Nakamura's xenocultural analysis team worked around the clock, tracking the transmission's impact. Each communication relay brought new insights, new reactions that defied conventional diplomatic models. The transmission is creating quantum-level resonance across multiple civilizational communication networks, she reported to Rodriguez. "We're seeing something unprecedented." The Krell theory hegemony, once considered an immutable force of galactic domination, found itself in complete disarray. Their collective consciousness, a network of biomechanical intelligence that had seemed invincible, was experiencing a fundamental crisis. On their primary communication hub, massive data centers began to fragment. The very foundation of their understanding of intelligent life was being systematically dismantled by a single transmission. Back on the Defiance, Captain Rodriguez reviewed the incoming data streams. Her cybernetic eye parsed millions of communication signatures, seeing patterns that traditional analysis would miss. "ARI," she called out, "compile comprehensive impact assessment." The ship's AI began to weave together a complex tapestry of galactic response. It wasn't just about the military engagement anymore. The Defiance had become something more, a symbol of resistance, of possibility. Marcos Chen's quantum communication systems continued to track the transmission spread. "It's creating quantum-level resonance," he reported. "We're seeing communication patterns that shouldn't be possible. The message is evolving, adapting as it spreads." Unintended consequences began to emerge. Dormant resistance movements on Krell-controlled worlds began to stir. Species that had been systematically oppressed for generations found themselves reconnecting, sharing the transmission, understanding that resistance was possible. The United Terran Command Center found itself facing a diplomatic challenge unlike any in human history. The Defiance had not just engaged in a military conflict, it had fundamentally altered the galactic power structure. Incoming diplomatic requests, the Central AI reported. Multiple uncontacted civilizations seeking direct communication. Admiral Yoshida understood the magnitude of the moment. This was more than a military victory. This was a fundamental reimagining of humanity's place in the cosmos. Rodriguez received a personal transmission from the command center. The words were simple but carried profound implications. Prepare for comprehensive diplomatic engagement. First contact protocols are being completely rewritten. The Defiance had become more than a ship. It was a statement, a promise, a warning. As the transmission continued to spread, something extraordinary began to happen. Civilizations that had been isolated, oppressed, or simply afraid began to communicate. The quantum communication burst had become a catalyst, a moment of collective awakening. Araya's final assessment was both clinical and profound. Transmission impact. Fundamental restructuring of galactic power dynamics. Probability of long-term systemic change, 94.7%. Rodriguez looked out at the vast emptiness of space. The stars seemed different now, no longer just points of light, but potential points of contact, of understanding. Humanity had sent a message to the universe, and the universe was listening.